The war didn't start with a bang. It started with a wet, heavy thud. Arthur Pringle loved two things: his 1960s mid-century modern ranch and his Kentucky bluegrass lawn. In the upscale Aspen Hollow development, Arthur's yard was a masterpiece of horticultural precision. But Aspen Hollow had a design flaw. Arthur's corner lot sat directly adjacent to the overflow parking lot of the community clubhouse, a lot managed by an HOA board that viewed Arthur as a nuisance for his constant emails about drainage. When the great blizzard of 2022 hit, the HOA's snowplow contractor, a man named Miller who had a long-standing grudge against Arthur's no trespassing signs, saw an opportunity. Instead of hauling the snow to the designated retention pond, Miller pushed every cubic yard of frozen, salt-crusted slush directly onto Arthur's pristine front lawn. By the time the storm cleared, Arthur's house was invisible from the street. A 15-foot mountain of gray, dirty ice sat atop his dormant grass. Arthur didn't scream. He didn't rage. He simply took a photo, measured the height of the mound, and sent a polite email to the HOA president, Marcus Thorne. He requested the removal of 400 cubic yards of snow, noting that the salt content would destroy his soil pH. Marcus's reply came 3 minutes later. "Arthur, it's an act of God. We have nowhere else to put it. Be a team player. It'll melt by April." But it didn't just happen once. For 3 years, the pattern repeated. Every flurry, every dusting, every nor'easter, the plow would roar to life at 3 a.m., and like clockwork, the great wall of aspen would rise on Arthur's lawn. The salt killed his grass. The weight compacted his soil into concrete. The spring runoff flooded his basement. Each year, the HOA laughed off his complaints, citing a vague emergency easement clause that didn't actually exist. They thought Arthur was a harmless old man with a rake. They forgot that Arthur was a retired civil engineer who specialized in structural mass and soil displacement. The third year was the breaking point. After a record-breaking February dump, the pile was so high it blocked Arthur's second-story windows. Marcus Thorne actually posted a photo of the snow mountain on the neighborhood Facebook group with the caption, "Arthur's new addition. Hope he likes the view." Arthur sat in his darkened living room, the blue light of his laptop reflecting off his glasses. He wasn't looking at Facebook. He was looking at the original 1988 property survey of the clubhouse parking lot. He discovered something beautiful. The HOA had expanded the parking lot in 2015 without a new survey. In doing so, they had paved exactly 4 feet onto Arthur's property line. Furthermore, the drainage culvert they used was technically a private pipe Arthur had installed decades ago. Arthur didn't call a lawyer. Not yet. He called a soil remediation specialist and a heavy equipment rental company. He waited for the first week of March, the week of the Great Thaw. The plan required precision. Under the cover of a foggy Tuesday night, Arthur went to work. First, he used a specialized industrial vacuum truck, rented under the guise of basement waterproofing, to suck the melting, salty slush off his lawn. But he didn't dispose of it. He pumped it into 4 massive, insulated industrial bladders hidden in his oversized garage. Then he brought in the earth mover. Because the HOA had encroached on his land, Arthur had the legal right to renovate his property line. He spent 8 hours digging a trench exactly 4 feet wide and 6 feet deep, running the entire length of the clubhouse parking lot. He didn't leave it as a trench. He lined the trench with reinforced steel plates and high-density polyethylene. He then rerouted the clubhouse's main drainage pipe, the one that drained the entire 3-acre parking lot, directly into a dead-end containment vault he had built beneath his own soil. The next morning, the board arrived for their monthly meeting. Marcus Thorne pulled his $90,000 Porsche into his reserved spot. He noticed Arthur standing on his porch, sipping tea. Arthur's lawn was strangely clear of snow. "Glad to see you finally shoveled, Artie," Marcus yelled with a smirk. "I didn't shovel, Marcus," Arthur called back, his voice calm. "I just relocated the assets." Within an hour, the relocation became apparent. A sudden spring rainstorm began. A warm, heavy downpour. Normally, the water would flow off the parking lot, into the culvert and away. But Arthur had plugged the culvert, and he had opened the valves on his 4 industrial bladders. The 400 cubic yards of salt slush he had harvested from his lawn were now being pumped, in liquid form, directly under the asphalt of the parking lot through the holes he drilled the night before. As the rain intensified, the physics of hydrostatic pressure took over. The water had nowhere to go. It backed up, pooled. But more importantly, the salt slurry Arthur had pumped underneath began to dissolve the poorly compacted subbase the HOA had used for their illegal expansion. Around 2 p.m., a low rumbling sound echoed through the neighborhood. Marcus Thorne looked out the clubhouse window just in time to see his Porsche sink. The asphalt didn't just crack. It folded. Because Arthur had removed the support soil on his side of the line and replaced it with a slip plane of plastic and oil, the entire western half of the parking lot, roughly 20 spaces, slid 6 feet downward into Arthur's trench. The parking lot wasn't just flooded. It was buried under itself. The great wall of snow that had once sat on Arthur's grass was now a great pit of asphalt, sitting on the HOA's pride. The HOA board erupted. They called the police. They called the city. They called their lawyers. Marcus Thorne stood on the edge of the crater, screaming about malicious destruction of property. Arthur walked down his driveway, holding a laminated map and a stack of permits. "Evening, officers," Arthur said to the bewildered cops. "I'm just performing some court-authorized boundary remediation. You see, the HOA has been trespassing on my land with their pavement for years. I sent 15 notices. They ignored them. So, I reclaimed my soil." "You destroyed the lot," Marcus shrieked. "No," Arthur corrected gently. "The lot destroyed itself because you failed to adhere to the drainage codes I warned you about in 2023, 2024, and 2025. My remodeling of my own land simply highlighted your engineering failures." Arthur then handed Marcus a final document. "Since your drainage system is now discharging illegally onto my private property via that pipe I blocked, the EPA has a few questions for you about the salt levels in the local water table, levels your snowplows created." The HOA was bankrupt within 6 months. The cost to repair the lot, move the boundary line, and pay the environmental fines was more than their insurance would cover. Marcus Thorne had to sell his Porsche to cover his share of the special assessment. Arthur's lawn? He used the settlement money to install a state-of-the-art, underground geothermal heating system. Now, the moment a snowflake touches his grass, it melts instantly. The parking lot was never repaved. The HOA couldn't afford it, so they had to turn it into a natural meadow. Every morning, Arthur sits on his porch, looking at the field of wildflowers where the snow mountain used to be. Sometimes he sees Marcus Thorne walking by, staring at the ground, and Arthur just raises his teacup. The silence is the best part.